Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and welcome back. I know I have been gone for quite some time this year, but it's taken me a while to heal and to get back to where I feel like I can get back in the kitchen and record videos for you guys. So in this video, I'm going to share with you all 3 non-traditional desserts. They still are going to have, one's going to be pumpkin, one's going to be pecan, but the other one's going to be blueberry. And so let's just get cooking and let me show you those desserts. Gives you an option for your Thanksgiving with your families. Okay, so for the first one, it's actually, there are pecan bars, and it comes out of the Best of the American Test Kitchen magazine. My mom found this years ago and made it for us, loved it, so she bought me the magazine, bought me the pan to go with it, and everything for the right size. And then the other one is going to be a frosted pumpkin bar. It's an old recipe that my mom's had for a long time. I'm not even really sure where it came from. She took a picture of it, and I don't know if you guys can see that, but you can see like the page even fell out of the book, and so it's been around for quite some time. And the third is going to be a blueberry cobbler. So we're going to start by toasting the pecans first for the bars, because we want to get those in the oven. And while we're doing that, the next one is going to be the blueberry cobbler. So I'm going to set these recipes aside, and we're going to go ahead and get our pecans onto a sheet. Now I've already had my oven preheating to 350 degrees, and so this recipe takes 2 1/4 cups of pecans total. So where did I put my pecans? Oh, behind me. All right, so before we get started, let me get the hair back, and let's get the pecans measured. Now everybody's oven's a little different, so I would say start at 8 minutes. You don't need these pecans. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get these measured out, and I just put a parchment sheet down on my pan, and I'm gonna go ahead and get these measured. You can use chopped or whole pecans, it doesn't matter, because you're going to chop them up anyways, so it's really up to you on whatever you have in your kitchen. Oops. Sorry, that was kind of loud. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get these in the oven. All right, so while those are beginning to toast, and like I said, you don't need them super toasted, you just wanna get a nice little roast on them. I'm gonna go ahead and do the blueberry cobbler. Now, my son had asked if I had a recipe for it, and I do not. I basically, when it comes to cobblers, I just wing it. So I'm gonna go ahead, and I bought, now obviously fresh is always the best, but fresh, unless you can catch it on sale right now, is just not always feasible. So I decided to do just frozen, and I bought just, sorry, they were on a plate because you can kind of see the juice over here leaking. I bought wild blueberries because my husband loves the wild blueberries. So this, we're just gonna go ahead and probably make a bit of a mess, but get them in here. Now, a lot of the juice did wind up on the plate and actually into my refrigerator. So it was a bit of a mess to clean up this morning. So keep in mind, you do want these to thaw before you bake them, just because you do want to get some of that juice out of there. There's still going to be some, but you don't want it to be so full. So it was a mess to clean up, which is kind of why my hands are purple. But anyways, you can see a little bit of the liquid. I think you can see that because it's also dark in there. So we're going to start with this. From here, I'm going to take 1 lemon. And again, I tend to just eyeball things when it comes to cobblers. I feel like they're kind of hard to mess up. The biggest thing is the amount of liquid that would be within the cobbler itself. Only because too much liquid and it's gonna make it super watery. I don't know if you guys, it's probably really hard to see, but there is quite a bit. So I'm gonna drain just a touch more off, just a little bit. It's probably only about 1/4 cup that I took off of there. So I'm gonna grate a little bit of this lemon. Lemon and blueberry obviously go very, very well together. So I'm just gonna get this. And you could maybe say it would equal maybe a teaspoon of it, but like I said, I'm just adding a little bit for flavor to give that nice little contrast to it. And then I'm just going to squeeze about half of this lemon into my bowl here. And that's about it. Now from there, I do like to add just a splash of vanilla, so maybe about 1 teaspoon. It's not quite a splash, but you get the idea. And I also like to add just a touch of almond extract. That was more of a splash. I am gonna add in maybe about a half a teaspoon of salt just to help enhance the flavor. Let me grab some sugar. We're gonna add in sugar and flour to this. So for the amount of blueberries, I forgot to tell you guys, this was the 40-ounce bag. So it's a little over 2 pounds of blueberries. You can see they are quite tiny because they are wild blueberries, and so, which is just fine. You can do the regular one, that's really up to you. For this amount, I am going to start with a half a cup of sugar, and then we will taste and see if it needs any more. I don't want it too sweet because we are going to put a crumble topping on it, and that is going to be sweet as well because it's made with brown sugar. So I don't want to make this so overly sweet that you lose that blueberry flavor. All right, so let me grab the flour. Now for the flour, I'm going to start with like 3 tablespoons of flour. To see, this is something I will actually measure. I don't want so much where, or not enough I should say, where it doesn't thicken it some. Okay. Now you could taste it before you add the flour if you're concerned about consuming raw flour. That would be perfectly fine. I'm not too worried about it. You can begin to see that flour is thickening it up just a touch. We are not going to heat this ahead of time. This is going to just go straight into our baking dish. All right, let me get a little tasting spoon. Yep, I think that's got plenty of sugar in it. I don't think it needs any more, in my opinion. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the flour put away. I'm gonna go get my pan, and the pecans are about to come out of. Okay, the pecans are done. And so what I like to do is roast them just until they're fragrant, which takes about 8 minutes at a 350-degree oven. Like I said, you don't want them too done because these are actually going to bake again in the bar. So we're going to set this aside to let them cool a little bit while we work on some of the other desserts. Okay, so I got my pan for the cobbler, and so it's just a 8x8 pan. We're going to see how much it fills. If not, I will go a bit larger. So I'm gonna go ahead and spray it, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. I will just wash it, and I'll get a little bit larger of a casserole dish. Just gonna give it a little spray. And I am going to use this slotted spoon. Well, I want some of the liquid. I don't want it so crazy soupy. So we're gonna go ahead and put the blueberries in first. Plus, this just gives me an idea of what's going to fit, and so the liquid's not taking up all of the space. Yeah, this is going to be a good size. Now, again, keep in mind that these blueberries are really tiny, and so if you have bigger blueberries, you get the just regular size, then you may need to go a bit bigger for your pan. Okay, so I think we're good. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pour it all in there. wanting to scrape the sides and make sure, grab my spatula actually, that this is all in here. And we're gonna go ahead and get this bowl washed out so I can use it to make the crumble topping for the blueberries. And then we're gonna get this in, actually I'm gonna preheat my oven to 350, or I'm sorry, 375. It's at 350 right now, so we can bake the cobbler. So let me get this washed and then I will be right back. Okay, so bowl is ready. So what I'm gonna start with is just a half a cup of butter. I have softened this stick in the microwave a little bit, and then we're just gonna go ahead. You can use your stand mixer for this. I honestly just thought I'll do my hand mixer just because for space reasons. So I'm gonna go ahead and just whip this up just to make sure it's nice and soft. Okay, so just to about right there. And then I'm gonna add in a half a cup of brown sugar to it. Now with this, again, this is one that I don't normally measure. I just kind of wing it because I know what I'm looking for, but I will do my best to give you guys actual measurements for everything so you can make it. Once you've done it at least once, it's easy to kind of eyeball and see what to do. All right, so again, you're just looking for that. You're not looking to really cream the butter and the sugar together like you would for a base of a cookie, because you're going to be adding flour, so you want this to crumble so it will just kind of break down and dissolve in the oven. Now this is the part that I never really measure, I just eyeball. So we're going to start with a half a cup of flour at a time and see how many we wind up needing to put in there to get the right consistency. And I will show you that as we move along. Okay, so we're definitely going to need just a little bit more than a half a cup. As you can see, the flour absorbs into the butter and sugar, but it's more of a like cookie dough consistency. We want it to crumble just a bit more. So we're going to add, you know what, let's do a quarter cup just to make sure. I don't want to add too much flour to it. So again, some of my recipes are just me figuring it out as I go along. Okay, I'm gonna add the other quarter cup and then I think we'll be close to. So right now we're gonna be at 1 cup of flour total. Just go from there. Okay, now you can see, oops, sorry. Okay, now you can see that it looks more like a crumble than a cookie dough. Now you will still have a few pieces that will want to kind of smush together, but you've got just more of a crumble consistency. So get ahead and get this out of the way. Just slide that out of the way for a second. Okay, and so all I'm going to do now is, you can see the liquid on there. The reason why I like extra crumble topping is because some of the topping will kind of absorb into that liquid a little bit, which is going to make it really, really good, super flavorful. You don't have to add anything else to your crumble topping. Now, some people do like to add oats to it. I've never been just personal preference, never been a huge fan of that, but if you like it, then you can add maybe a half a cup to 3/4 of like rolled oats, and that will give you another texture to your crumble topping, but this is just a personal preference on how I like it. And there you go. Now I could have even added just a touch more flour to give it even more crumble, but I'm good with this because I've got little pieces of crumble, I've got bigger pieces, so this is exactly what I'm looking for. So we're gonna pop this in the oven, and this is gonna bake anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes, but I will keep you guys posted on how long. Okay, so the timer is now set for 35 minutes, and so we're gonna go ahead and get this mess cleaned up a little bit and then move on to the pumpkin bars because I still need the pecans to completely cool down before we make the crust. So now we're gonna start on the frosted pumpkin bars, and so this is really easy to put together. As I was gathering up everything for it, I decided to turn the oven back down to 350 for the cobbler, only because that's the temperature the bars cook at. And so instead of turning on both of my ovens, it'll be fine for the cobbler. Again, it's really hard to mess up a cobbler. You obviously don't want to cook it at 400 degrees, then you'll burn it before everything cooks through. But to go down to 350 from 375 will be completely fine. It just might take it 45 minutes instead of 35, which works for me because I'm going to be in the kitchen anyways working on all of these desserts. So into the bowl, we're going to do 2 cups of granulated sugar. And then I'm going to be adding in 2 cups of flour. And all of this is just one bowl. I'm going to just use this bowl and use my hand mixer again instead of pulling out my stand mixer, just for ease of what's on my countertop. Let's pull this one out here. I've got 2 cups of sugar, 2 cups of flour. We're gonna go ahead and add in the baking powder, soda, cinnamon, and salt. We're gonna get all the dry ingredients done first, and let me go grab the baking soda. Okay, so to it, I'm gonna add in 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Oh, there it is. Teaspoon of baking soda. Sometimes they have chunks in it, so I try to make sure I can get it without the chunks. There we go, and smooth it out a little bit more. All right, it's also going to be 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. You know what? Actually, I think I'm going to switch this. I'm going to do pumpkin pie spice, and I'm actually going to increase the amount. I like to do that when I'm making various pumpkin loaves, or I made pumpkin pancakes and waffles for my daughter's birthday because she loves pumpkin. And so I swap out the cinnamon for just a pumpkin pie mix, and I added in a total of 1 tablespoon. Again, a lot of times when you make something pumpkin, that spice doesn't come through. You just don't taste it as well. And so I always like to increase it. But the original recipe just says 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. So you can, if you don't have pumpkin pie spice, you can absolutely do that. Okay, so I just added in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. All right, let me just whisk this together. All right. You may not even need the hand mixer for this. You might just be able to do it with the whisk now that I'm thinking of it, but we'll have to just see how it goes. Okay, so everything is just kind of mixed up. So to the center, we're just gonna add in all of our wet ingredients. It is gonna be, I can't see that. It says 1 16-ounce can of pumpkin, but sizes have changed. It's 15 ounces. So I've got some extra pumpkin in my refrigerator that I can use, but if need be, 1 should be sufficient. So I'm just gonna add in the entire can of pumpkin puree, and this is just pure pumpkin. This is not pumpkin pie mix. You wanna make sure that you are getting, oops, sorry, pure pumpkin. And it can be anybody's brand, or if you do your own, which would be really good as well. That's just not something that I do. My mom does, she loves to do it, but she also will grow pumpkins too. Or she'll buy her pie pumpkins and then just do it from there. So, but I know a lot of people will make their own puree. I just have never done that. So, all right, to it, we're also gonna add 1 cup of oil, and this is just vegetable oil. I would only recommend vegetable oil. I would not do, sorry about that, I would not do olive oil. You could maybe do melted butter in it, but I am trying to keep the cake itself dairy free for my daughter. We are going to top this with cream cheese icing, but I'm going to take part of it out later and make her own cream cheese icing, if you will, quote unquote, because it's dairy free. So, but she doesn't know the difference anymore. She said she can't taste the difference between the fake stuff and tastes like butter to her now. So, all right, I'm gonna grab my egg. All right, so it's 4 eggs that are gonna go in here, and I do like to crack open my eggs into a bowl first, just to make sure I don't get any shells into the eggs. And that's also too, in case one of the eggs is bad. We've all had that happen, where you get a spot on your egg, and so you definitely don't want to cook with that. You want to toss that away. That is a tiny little egg. Alrighty, we're gonna make that work. Alright, so I'm gonna add the eggs in. And let's just see what else we need. We got the pumpkin, the oil, the eggs. Okay, and there's no vanilla in this, so that's it. Okay, so we are all done. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start with my spoon to mix it up a little bit, and then we'll try it with the whisk, and if not, we'll just use the hand blender to bring it all together. Looks like a whisk will be sufficient. Okay, now that I'm bending my whisk, now that it is all mixed up, we're gonna go ahead and get our cookie sheet, or our pan, I should say. I have this smaller sheet pan. I believe the recipe says, you know what, I don't know what the recipe says without my glasses. Put it in a 15.5 by 10 inch jelly roll pan. This is the smallest one I have, so it may be close to that size, so we're gonna just use this. Again, this is a really old recipe, and so I don't really know if that size pan even is around anymore. All right, so just gonna spray this pan just to make sure we can pull it out later. All right. You can also, if you don't have any spray, you can use butter, you can use a little shortening, you can even use like a little olive oil or anything to coat it down. Again, I'm trying to keep this dairy free so I can take a part of it and let my daughter can eat it as well. All right, we're gonna get this poured in here. I'm gonna get a spatula so I can get the rest out. so I'm gonna get the rest of this scraped out of here. And I'm just gonna finish spreading it out until it's even. You definitely don't want anything bigger than what this is, and I'll have to measure it, but you know, I don't actually know the size of this pan. I've had it for so long. Anything larger, this would be too thin of a cake, because this is gonna bake up. You do want it to be basically a sheet cake. So we're gonna spread it out like that. Just get the rest of that off. All right, so this is gonna go in a 350-degree oven for, sorry, without my glasses, 25 to 35 minutes. So I will keep you guys posted on So that cobbler is obviously going to take quite a while to cook. So when the pumpkin bars come out, if there is not a lot of movement on that cobbler where the top is rounding and it's starting to bubble, then I will kick the temperature back up. So I could just use my other oven, but I just want to have one, because if not, it gets really, really hot in here with both of them going at the same time. So I'm going to get this cleaned up, and then we're going to move on to the pecan bars. So I wanted to show you guys something real quick. I went to put the pumpkin cake into to the oven, and you can see, I told you that the crumble would somewhat absorb into the liquid, and it has. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to quickly, I pulled it out because it'll be fine. It's not like it has any eggs or anything in it where you're interrupting the cooking process. But I'm going to go ahead and make another batch of crumble real quick, and then get that put on top. So basically just double what I told you guys in the beginning. So it would be a cup of butter, a cup of brown sugar. It'll be 2 to 2 1/4 cups or 2 1/2 cups of flour. Again, depending on the crumble that you want. I'm gonna go ahead and mix this up quick and get that going. So I'm gonna just go ahead and add in a cup and a half, so that would make it a total of like 2 1/2 cups of flour for doubling the recipe. I just like a lot more of the crumble on the crumble topping when I make the crumble. So I should say a cobbler. Okay, that might have been too much. Okay, I swear I know what I'm doing. This is why this is one of those things that I eyeball versus following a recipe, which maybe I should. And this is the result of having too much flour in it. So I'm gonna change my mind again and tell you, I mean, you can see it'll kind of crumble up, but I feel like it needs just, well, you know what, hold on. I may just have to do this part by hand. Sometimes when you reach this point, you can crumble it better by hand than you can with the mixer. So again, stick to 2, or start with 2 cups and then see if you want it to be a little bit more crumbly. Because like I said, you will want it, unless you are good with just a little bit of topping on there, then that's fine too. But I'm just gonna crumble this by hand. It seems to be coming together, so I don't actually need to add any more butter. I apologize, it's been a while since I've been in the kitchen, and so sometimes you tend to forget things. But again, it's really hard to mess this up. So you're just basically wanting to, again, create crumbles. And as you can see, it's almost like, you know, sand. And that's, you know, you can see it starting to form into crumbles by just doing it by hand. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this sprinkled on there and get another nice layer. And I'm sure that the liquid will absorb some of this again, but that's okay. This will help give us a nice crunchy top on top of the crumble. And again, once the pumpkin bars come out, then I will kick my oven back up so this will cook at a little bit faster temperature. Now, if you do this in a much larger pan, then you may want to triple or quadruple the crumble recipe. You'll just have to do it on what fits for what pan you have or how many people that you are feeding. So, okay. Okay, so for the pecan, we're going to start with the crust, the pecan bars, I should say. And so you need a food processor to put this all together. And so we're going to go ahead and get everything in here and then get this put together and get it in our pan. All right, so to it, we are going to add 1 cup of flour. This is going to be 1/3 cup of brown sugar. I'm going to add in, it's obviously overflowing, but it's 1/4 cup of pecans. I always put some extra in there. Okay, we're also gonna add in 6 tablespoons of butter. And so I am going to go ahead and just cut this up into chunks before I add it. Now, normally you would, when making a pastry, would put the pastry attachment onto your food processor. I'm going to leave the other one for now just because we want to get those pecans chopped up. Now, to it also is 1 teaspoon of salt. And a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Put the lid on. Go ahead and pulse it. Well, it helps if you plug it in first, actually. Okay, now let's try to pulse it. And now I'm going to go ahead and just let it go on low until it comes together. Okay, and all you want to do when you're doing this is have it come together, and you're going to form and press this crust into a pan. So it doesn't need to be just like a dough, like you would be making a pie dough. You want it to be, it kind of looks like the crumble that we just made for the blueberry. And as you can kind of see, it holds together. So we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give it one more go since there is flour on the edge here that didn't get mixed in. This one off. And anything left that doesn't mix in properly, we can just do by hand or with like a little spoon or something, but this is what you're looking for. Okay, so I did decide to go ahead and turn on my second oven just because the pecan bars have to cook at 350 degrees as well, and I really want that cobbler to finish up. My husband keeps asking about it, so I want to make sure that it gets done soon so he can enjoy it. And so anyways, just I probably should have paid a bit more attention to my recipes, but you know what? That's okay. I've got all day. I can be in the kitchen and it doesn't matter. You know, extend yourself some grace when planning doesn't go like you want to. So anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and get the bar set up because the crust does have to bake first for 20 minutes. So we're gonna go ahead and get that in the pan. And what I have is an 8x8 pan. You can use a glass if you want. I typically just use metal for something like this one. But we're gonna line it with, now quite honestly, you may not even have to line this with foil. The original recipe calls for it, so that's just what I've always done. So that's what I will always do. And the reason that they want you to do that is it makes it easy to lift the bars out and cut them once they're cooled. So you put one sheet here. And you want to be, you know, push it into the corners, but just be careful because there have been times where the bars have stuck a little bit to the foil. If that happens, I just cut around it. It's not the big deal. So you're going to turn your pan the other way because as you can see, there's longer edges here. Take another sheet of foil and press it down in there. And that's pretty much it, because as you can see, you'll be able to just lift them out once they are baked. Okay. So I always make sure I spray it really well before I put in the crust. And as you can see, the crust is crumbly, kind of like the crumble topping. Just drop it in here. And so what you will do from here is you will just spread it out evenly, and then you'll just press it down into, or onto, I should say, the foil. And you just want to just turn it as you go. You'll be able to feel, you know, if you need to shift, like there's a little bit more here. So I just want to push and shift and make it, try to make it as even as possible. You should be able to feel it. All right, that's the timer for the pumpkin bars. So I'm going to take a peek real quick and see if they are ready. Okay, so no, they're not. They need 10 more minutes. So it looks like it's going to be 35 minutes for the pumpkin bars, but everybody's oven is different. So just make sure you know your oven and start at 25. And if you have to, just increase either 5 or 10 minutes, you know, depending on how wet it looks still. So, all right, so our crust is in. So we're going to pop this in the oven. Okay, so while I was getting everything ready for the filling for the pecan bars, the pumpkin bars are done. So this, it took 35 minutes to get it done. This is what you're looking for. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna set this aside, let it cool completely, and then we'll make the cream cheese icing. For it. And you can see it's a sheet, it's just like a thinner sheet cake, and it's great because it's not, it gives you the pumpkin flavor, it's super tender, obviously with the cream cheese icing. It's just a different take on something for pumpkin for Thanksgiving. So we are going to go ahead and get our filling done because I think we have about 9 minutes left until it's time to pull the crust out. So I want to get that done and ready to go. All right, so to my bowl, I already added 4 tablespoons of butter and melted it. To that, I'm going to add in half a cup of brown sugar. I'm also going to add in a 1/3 cup of corn syrup. And you will want to make sure that you get this all scraped out. It does like to cling to the sides. And then from here, I'm just gonna give it a mix. I don't want to add in my egg when my butter is still really hot because you don't want to scramble the eggs. So I just give it just a quick little mix like this. And then to that, I'm gonna go ahead and add in I'm gonna save the egg for right at the end. Now, the recipe originally calls for either bourbon or dark rum. I used to not do that at all. I used to just skip that part and I would swap it out for heavy cream, but now I put the rum in there. So I'm just gonna use the spiced rum that I have. And it's going to be 1 tablespoon of rum. And don't worry, the alcohol does cook off. You're just getting the flavor of the rum, but you're not getting any alcohol with it. Now, I'm also gonna add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And then let's see, it's a half a teaspoon of salt. Okay, I'm gonna grab some new teaspoons. These are usually when I bake, I will do dry teaspoons and wet teaspoons so I don't have to worry, but I did not grab that this morning. All right, so half a teaspoon of salt. I'm just gonna go ahead and mix that in. And now I believe the butter has cooled enough where I can add in the egg. So I'm just gonna, and that egg basically is going to thicken the filling when it cooks. This is basically like a pecan pie in a bar form. And I like it better because it's not as ooey gooey filling as a pecan pie would be. Now, I'm not saying that to upset anybody. I know there are a lot of people that like pecan pie. I just like it better in the bar form, and that's just a personal preference. Now we're gonna take our pecans and we are gonna get them chopped. This is just a rough chop. You don't have to use a food processor unless you really want to. You can just, and again, if you have pieces, then that works too. I've used both. It just, usually I keep pecan halves in the house because of other things that I make, like pralines and turtles and things like that, but either one will be just fine. And so just a rough chop is all that you're looking for, and then just put it into your bowl. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of these chopped up. And you can just look, if you find some that are still not really whole, you can just break them into pieces too. That's the other option instead of just chopping. If you want to, just break them with your hands like that. If you find that when you're chopping you've missed a few, because it does happen. That's it. Now the original recipe says to mix this and then you pour it on to the crust and then sprinkle with the pecans. I have found that I actually like to mix it all together. Just something, I think I'd accidentally did that one year and then realized, oh, oops, but I have found that I can actually spread out the mixture a bit better and get the pecans, oh my goodness, more evenly distributed. Okay, I'm gonna try that again. I can spread them out more evenly by having it all mixed together. Let's try that. Okay, and then that's it. So now we're just waiting on the crust. Okay, so the crust has baked for 20 minutes. And so now we're gonna go ahead and pour on the topping and then we're gonna finish baking it. And you want to make sure you try to get everything out of there, because that is the topping, that's the ooey gooey, that's so good. And then, okay, there we go. Just go ahead and you spread it around to all the corners of the crust. Sorry, it was hot. I was trying to figure out a way to get to it. Okay, and as you can see, just again, evenly spread it. Now, likely what I've put in here is more than 2 cups of pecans, just because I will measure it, but when you chop it up, it winds up becoming more than 2 cups. But it's never failed me to get a really good bar by adding just a touch more. So you can measure out after you've chopped, or you can measure before and then chop. So, all right, so this is it. And now we're gonna go ahead and put these back in the oven, and we're gonna cook them for another 25 minutes. And we're gonna go ahead and peek on the cobbler and see how it's doing. Okay, so don't forget to put foil underneath your cobbler, because it is starting to bubble over. It's got 6 more minutes, so we're gonna check it again in 6 minutes, but it is looking good. And adding in that extra layer of crumble actually works best. So definitely just double, don't do a single, because it will just kind of dissolve into the liquid of the cobbler. And as you can see, it has boiled over, but that's not unexpected. And so here it is. I'm going to tilt the camera down so you guys can see it. All right, there it is. And so the blueberry cobbler is done. And you can see it's still absorbed some of that crumb mixture, but that's okay. We don't need to add any more to it. This is perfect. It's got a nice browning on it. Sorry, it's got a nice browning on it, and so you can see it's bubbling. This is what you're looking for. And so we're going to go ahead and let this sit on the stovetop and cool down for several hours. I don't think my husband will wait that long to try it, but we'll let it cool down, and then I will plate it up so you guys can see it. All right, so the pecan bars are now done. So we are going to just let this cool for a little while, and then be back to cut this and then make the cream cheese icing for the pumpkin bars. And just see, here is the cobbler, and I told you, already missing. So I did a little taste test as well. Super, super good. So spot on as we created the recipe for getting a really good blueberry cobbler. So I'm curious to see what my husband thinks. It was too hot for him to eat it right away, but I'm sure I'll hear soon whether or not he liked it. But I tried it, and it is really, really good. Okay, so our pumpkin cake has now cooled, and we're gonna go ahead and make the cream cheese frosting. I did talk to my daughter, and she does not want any because her birthday was only a few days ago, and I had made her a big batch of pumpkin waffles with chocolate chips without, along with, not waffles, I'm sorry, pancakes and waffles. The chocolate chips were in the pancakes. And so she felt like she had enough pumpkin stuff. So I'm just gonna make a batch of regular cream cheese, but just know that you can absolutely, this is dairy free, and you can just put a dairy-free cream cheese icing on there and you are good to go. But for the rest of us that can, we're gonna go ahead and make the cream cheese icing. And so let's get that started. All right, so in my bowl, I have 2 blocks of cream cheese. They have softened. And to that, I'm gonna add 1 stick of butter. And then I'm just gonna use my hand mixer to mix this all up and get this put together. Okay, you want to make sure that you beat it till it's nice and smooth. This is why doing it when things are room temperature or, you know, softer than coming straight from the fridge will allow for you to have a nice smooth cream cheese frosting versus having chunks, because if you do it straight from the fridge, it will be harder to beat up. Even in a stand mixer that is far more powerful than the hand mixer, it just, you don't want chunks of butter in there. So we're going to keep going, and then we'll add in the powdered sugar and vanilla. Okay, so this is about a cup of powdered sugar that I had left over from the baby shower, and so I'm just going to add this in, and then we're going to add in about a teaspoon or so of vanilla, and then we'll mix it back up. Okay, I'm gonna get a spoon to taste this to see if we need any more powdered sugar. Nope, I think that works perfectly. So you can, I tend to want my cream cheese icing to not be as sweet because I want that cream cheese flavor to come through. But I don't want it to be like plain cream cheese. You do want a little bit of sweetness to it, of course, depending on what you're doing with it. You can add a little bit more to make it even sweeter. Or if you want to just leave it as is. I made cream cheese icing for the baby shower for our son and daughter-in-law, and my brother thought I didn't put enough sugar in there. He didn't realize that I prefer it not as sweet because it's going on to, for that it was going on to red velvet cupcakes. So just know that if with a cup you feel like you want it a touch sweeter, start with about a quarter to a half a cup, maybe, let's see, let me think, hold on one second. I would do probably a third cup at a time to sweeten it, because if you add too much, then it's gonna just be super sweet and you'll lose the cream cheese flavor. That's just what I have found, which is why I prefer it to be a bit more less sweet, I should say. All right, so we're just gonna I'm just gonna dollop this on here. See how tender the cake is because it's freshly made, and this is still a little on the cold side. It's thick, so it's gonna wanna pull up the tender part of the cake. So we're just gonna kind of drop it into various spots. It'll make it easy, or I should say easier, for icing the cake and hopefully not pulling it up. But if it does, it'll be okay. There are ways to hide things. If this is for, you know, you want to take it to a Thanksgiving banquet, or to your family's house, or if you're hosting, there are ways that if it does pull it up, you can just take toast some more pecans, chop them up and sprinkle it on top, or walnuts will work as well. So I just take a flat spatula and I'll just start to carefully try to move it back and forth. Just trying to get at least icing covering the entire cake. And then I come back and kind of smooth it out just a touch more. All right, well, most of that is now covered. Again, you can take walnuts and put it on top, or pecans. I like to just leave it as is, but you can absolutely add those things on there. That'll just enhance the flavor as well. And then I just like to go from one edge and kind of go back and forth like this. And it just puts a little pattern on top of the cream cheese and on top of the cake. And then that's it. You'll have a little bit left over. Somebody can enjoy that. And then there is the pumpkin cake. So we're gonna go ahead and cut the pecan bars now. As I told you, there's no way something's not going to be tasted, just because this is one of my husband's absolute favorite. These are like kryptonite for him. So he really wanted, he did eat the blueberry cobbler. He loved it, said it was really good. He is more of a big blueberry fan than even I am, and I thought it was fantastic. So I know he really enjoyed it. So these are still a little warm, but we're gonna go ahead, not like hot enough to not deal with, but see how it lifts right out of the pan? That's why you have the foil. And I just use my pastry cutter to cut them. So I will just pull down the edges and peel it back. You can kind of see that the foil may stick a little bit, but what I like to do is I'll just lift up the corners and I'll check and make sure that there's no foil that gets stuck. Sometimes it'll bake in and almost kind of like fold into the edges and that's just because of how it got pushed into the pan. The crusted, and it just kind of folded onto the foil. And if that happens, just cut the corner off. So I am just going to take my pastry cutter and come through and cut. You definitely want to let these cool before you do that, because the corner that my husband took, the crust was at the bottom was still crumbling as if it wasn't going to hold together. It's just because it was still too hot. But as you can see, now that's a big piece. They're not going to normally be quite that big. I usually cut them, and they usually are more even than that, but just to show you guys, this is just about the size that I cut them to, and then I'll put them on a tray and serve them. These freeze very well, so if you have extra, you can freeze them. They will keep for about 4 days in an airtight container. And so these are super good, and this is just another great alternative to having pecan pie, because again, you have the center, you have the gooiness, but it's not a thick bunch of goo where on a pecan pie the pecans rise to the top. This gives you a great little balance between all of it. So all right, so I'm going to get this set aside, or get this row cut up, and we're going to keep this one folded up. And then we're going to cut the pumpkin cake and scoop out the cobbler so you guys can see everything. Let me grab a pan. I'm going to put this back in here, and I'll cut those other ones in just a little bit. And there's the cobbler again. There's a piece missing. I showed you guys this kind of already. So this is going to be ready to go. This one's still really hot. This will take several hours to cool down, but it's definitely, you can eat it right now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get some of the cobbler. Put up. And this will continue to thicken, though I think it did really, really well with the 3 tablespoons of flour. But it will continue to thicken as it cools. I mean, things, you know, will stay hot and it'll stay thinner when it's hot longer. So anyways, this is the blueberry cobbler. And so now with this pumpkin cake, you do want to keep this in the refrigerator. And so, but we are going to go ahead and take a slice out now because I want you guys to be able to see it. But like I said, do not forget, you can top this with pecans or walnuts. And I may do that in time if somebody wants it, but for now, I'm good with just leaving it like this. And so just cut it into how big you want to make your slices. And then out comes the pumpkin cake. So we're gonna go ahead, we've got a little bowl slash plate here for everything. And then we have the pecan bars. And this is what you have when you're all done. So this gives you some different ideas of things to do. So for, sorry, holding it, try it that way, see if I can hold it without it sliding. This just gives you some different options for Thanksgiving desserts that change things up a little bit. You still have pecans, you still have pumpkin, but then a blueberry cobbler is a nice treat. If you like apple, do apple. You can obviously do strawberry rhubarb. You can do what am I thinking? Raspberry. That's what I'm thinking. Raspberry. So there's different cobblers you can do, but the blueberry one is because my husband really loves blueberries, and it's nice and easy. And again, you can see the frozen work just fine. So there we go. So I hope you guys. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a try now that it's cooled a little bit again. I tried a little bit when it was hot, but now that things have cooled off, go ahead and give it another try. It's really, really good. Those wild blueberries are amazing. Absolutely amazing. So now I've had the pecan bars. These are fantastic. I don't need to taste them because I already ate one off camera. So I know that they're fantastic. And then for the pumpkin, it's been years since I've made this. I think because my daughter usually likes to have a pie, so I'll do that for her. But this year I really wanted to do the bars, and it looks like it has worked out. So so good. That pumpkin pie spice comes through and it's not overbearing. It doesn't overwhelm everything. It gives a really nice balance to it. Tastes just like pumpkin pie. And that cream cheese icing is just the right amount of sweetness. And they both complement each other because the cake, it's sweet. And so you don't want the frosting, unless you do. I mean, some people like super sweet stuff. My husband's one of them. He likes things that are really sweet. I don't like them as sweet, even though I love desserts. So it really, you could amp it up a little bit with powdered sugar, but you don't need to. I think doing it just like I did is perfect. So anyways, thank you guys so much for joining me today. And for those that have hung around most of this year and I have not been here, I do want to say thank you. I really appreciate it, but I am finally feeling better and really ready to get in the kitchen and enjoy cooking, especially with the holidays coming up. So hope each and every one of you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I will be back soon with a couple other videos for different things for Thanksgiving as well. And I'll see you guys then. Bye.